Yo, what's up guys? Yeah, PokeaimMD here with a video talking about Aurora Veil. Now, Aurora Veil has recently been banned in NU and now in RU, and even though we did find out that Aurora Veil does not stack with Reflect and Light Screen, we recently found that out. Basically, in the game, you can both get up Aurora Veil and Reflect and Light Screen, but during damage calculations, it only takes one of them into account, so it doesn't stack. Meaning like you don't take less damage just because they're up. And that's something that's pretty big, considering the banning of Veil in NU had a lot to do with the fact that you can spam it with Reflect and Light Screen. So I have a few teams here that show Aurora Veil throughout the metagames. I don't actually know if Aurora Veil is used at all currently in UU, seeing as how Ninetales has moved up to OU, and that would mean you have to use the Ice Cream or Aurorus or maybe Abomasnow if you want to start getting up. I'm not 100% sure about Aurora Veil in the UU metagame, at least currently, but I'll be talking about it, what it was back when Xurkitree was around and back when Hawlucha was down there in UU. And again, just my general thoughts on Aurora Veil in general. So Aurora Veil is really good, right? Obviously, it's Reflect and Light Screen in one move, which means that a new type of team or a new type of offense was made in Sun and Moon. Aurora Veil offense. This is something that took over all the different tiers. As you can see right here, I have them all the way from NU to OU. I've even seen Aurora Veil, I'm pretty sure I saw it in Little Cup before too, back with Alolan Ninetales, or Alolan Vulpix rather. But don't quote me 100% on that. But I'm pretty sure we used Aurora Veil offense back on the ladder, at least back in the day. Maybe it got banned. Maybe I'm mistaken for something. But anyway, NU Aurora Veil was pretty generic. This was like I think the first variation of it, which was Aurora Sandslash, and then you had Pokemon like SD Drapion, Shell Smash Tortinator. What? Alright, anyway, you had something like SD Drapion, Shell Smash Tortinator, Quiver Dance Vivillon, and then SD Virizion. It could also have been, I saw some variations with Choice Scarf Drapion as well. But the idea was obviously Aurora set up the Hail and the Rocks, and then Alolan Sandslash sets up the Aurora Veil. Can also Rapid Spin for you while also abusing the Hail turns. And then Sandslash would be holding the Light Clay, and then you'd be able to set up with something like Turtonator. Turtonator would take like nothing from Steelix's Earthquake, set up and break through with Fire Blast. Vivian or Vivillon, whatever, would be able to set up Quiver Dances and Hurricane through. Same thing with Drapion. So this one was a little bit easier to actually maneuver versus, since it was so common. So there was actually a second variation of Aurora Veil that came up, which packed Cryogonal, and this was back when we didn't know that Aurora Veil and Reflect and Light Screen didn't stack. So this was something that we ended up seeing, and what this team ended up doing was replacing Drapion with Barbarical, and I think that's the biggest thing with Aurora Veil. There's no cookie cutter team with Aurora Veil. All you need is your Hail and a Pokemon with Aurora Veil, and then a bunch of setup mons that break for each other. So I'll actually show you a replay right here of, I think this is Meeps using this variation of Aurora Veil. But basically, the thing that really pushed it over the edge was obviously in NU. One of the reasons it got banned was because it stacked with Reflect and Light Screen, so we thought. So this is actually interesting now because we found out that it didn't stack with Reflect and Light Screen. So I'm not sure if they'll actually go back to it, but I kind of doubt it because RU also just recently banned it, like literally recently banned it yesterday, even though we know it doesn't stack with Reflect and Light Screen. But as you can see right here, Meeps actually makes a really good double, calling the Garbodor, and he still has enough Hail turns left to get in his Cryogonal, set up the Aurora Veil, which is big, and then he also sets up the Reflect, which at this point we thought stacked. So it actually did stack in showdown damage calculations because we thought in the real game it stacked. So Explosion was something he used. That's also something they used, was also Hail, Rapid Spin, and then he was able to get in Barbarical and pretty much just sweep from here. Goes for sub, the Steelix ends up Toxicking, so I mean maybe he knew that it didn't have Roar. But all he had to do was Shell Smash up, and then he's behind Reflect and Light Screen. He has a White Herb as well, and then he knocks out the Virizion with Return and pretty much just clean sweeps because the dude ends up running. And another variations would be a Shell Smash Barbarical with Constant to Crush, Return, Razor Shell. That pretty much has perfect coverage. So part of the reason that it got banned in NU was because there were so many different variations. There was no cookie cutter, this is the best Aurora Veil, how do I deal with this? Oh, okay, so they're going to have always Drapion, Turtonator. Alright, all I got to do is bring like Roar Steelix to deal with Drapion. Oh, wait, they have a Barbarical that can set up on my Xatu, which is running around. So, like, that was the thing about Veil. Like, it could pretty much change towards the metagame, and Aurora Veil ended up getting banned in NU. Of course, one of the big reasons, like I said, was the fact that people thought that it stacked with screens, and that's something we recently found out it did not. But I doubt that they will be revisiting Aurora Veil in NU, especially because it was recently banned in RU, and they already knew it didn't stack with screens. So, speaking of RU, one of the double stack teams right here that we got is Aurora's Cryogonal with the dual screens, Belly Drum Linoon, Shell Smash Barbarical with a Z move, SD Lumberry Pangoro, and Specs Espeon. I think this was my favorite Aurora Veil team to use in RU because you have Magic Bounce to actually bounce back the Defog. So let's say an opponent goes for Defog with their Gligar. If I go out to Espeon, it bounces back the Defog, meaning my screens are not gone. And the only thing gone is my opponent's hazards. We have SD Lumberry Pangoro, which is really good, especially versus Stall, with Mold Breaker being able to break through Quagsire, Umbreon cores. Actually, on my own variation of this team, I did run Brick Break on my Pangoro just for opposing Veil because it was a super threat. If my opponent got a Veil, I would have to rely on Speed Ties. Linoon would also run either Max Speed, outspeeding Max Speed Hoopa, or just full-on Bulk in that. And then Barbarical would be able to Shell Smash up. And we have a few examples of this in this video. I actually ended up using it in part of the RU Open. My opponent looked pretty weak to a Pokemon like Pangoro. You can see I'm going over it. Looked pretty weak to Pangoro, and basically what Pangoro would do, it would break through the Blade, it would break through Chestnut, it would break through Tyrantrum with the screens up, and then I hopefully would be able to, yeah, I'm looking for Whitney, but I hopefully would be able to break through with Linoon after that. Of course, my opponent had some good options for it, being the Sharpedo, and I actually messed up here. What I should have done was gone Pangoro on Sharpedo always, but at this point I didn't know that they reverted back to running Psychic Fangs. I thought that special was a lot more common, so I ended up going Linoon, and he ended up Psychic Fangs, breaking through my screen right here. And that was just one way how you could counterplay Aurora Veil. Psychic Fangs was another thing, but I ended up using it again here, and this was, get this ad out of here. Wait, what game was that? Hold up. That game actually looked kind of fire. This is another variation of Veil that I used. It was with my boy 49s, and right now I'm currently facing a bulkier team, so my opponent really doesn't have a way of getting rid of my Veil because his defogger is Gligar, and Gligar has to defog on Feraligatr, SD Beware, 2 ice types, and a potential mon that gets a Moxie Boost or a Belly Drum mon. So all I had to do was get up the Veil. You guys know how Veil works. Go out into my Beware, and I basically just set up. I could set up alongside a Scavalier. I had Normalium Z, which would be able to knock out Gligar 100% after rocks. So, and as you can see right here, I also have my own variation. Originally, this thing had superpower. I put Brick Break on it just in case opposing Veil because it was such a giant threat. That Brick Break was ran on a lot of mons. Besides this one, I did end up winning that game. Besides this one, we have 2 semifinalists for the RU Open. You have Atomic Llamas and Welio. And as you can see, Welio actually brought Veil right here because it's a very real strategy. It's a very scary strategy. And Atomic Llamas actually has a pretty cool tech, as you guys will see. I mean, it is Brick Break. I already hyped it up. But he led Frost Slash, which is smart, and he just starts spamming ICU, which is really smart because, again, the thing about this variation of Aurora Veil is your opponent has Espeon to Magic Bounce hazards. It specs Espeon, by the way. And he actually does get a little bit lucky here because he gets the crit, which is able to knock out Espeon after the speed drops. But the dude still does have Veil turns left, and he can go Auroras. And if he wants to, he can Blizzard to knock him out, which is smart as well because what Blizzard ends up doing is it gives him the opportunity to potentially reset the Hail if he wants to. So goes Barbaric on the superpower, goes down, and what he can do is because Hail goes back down, go back out into Roars just to get up that Hail one more time, sack it, and then be able to go out into Cryogonal, and you guys know what it does. It sets up the screens and whatnot. But like I said, Aurora Veil was so centralizing in the RU tier that Atomic Llamas ended up running, instead of Sacred Sword and the Blade, he ended up running Brick Break, which allowed him to break through that and in the end win this game. So that was just a cool tech. And I think the thing with RU is that the fact that it's just so much harder to punish your opponent. it's not like an OU, and I'll talk about it, but it's not like an OU where you have Intimidate users and Landers that you could just swap in to help versus the setup sweepers, or Tangrowth to pivot in, or Toxapex to haze, or Celesteela. RU is just, it's more so like you either have a matchup that auto loses to it, or you have Brick Break on a member in your team that is only good in that specific case. I used an SD Beware, and Brick Break was so much weaker than Superpower would have been. Same thing with Pangoro. Drain Punch helps Pangoro get that recovery, but in this case, Brick Break, I needed to use it because of the fact that my opponent could bring Veil, and this was in tournament play. So the next one we're going to be talking about is UU. Now, UU Veil was really, really cool. Originally, when Xurkitree was there, it was really smart because what you would do is you'd set up the Veil, right, with your Ninetales, which would have the Light Clay. You go Xurkitree, and you use PokeaimMD. This gives you a speed boost, and basically, you'd force in their Crocodile. Like, Crocodile would usually be a Mon or a Scarf Mon to revenge kill you, right? And right after that, once Crocodile came in, it was the beginning of the end because how Lucha would just set up on any Crocodile set. And I'll actually show you a replay right here. Now, this was one of my UU Open early rounds, I think. We both ended up leading differently because we both had Veil, right? So I led Aerodactyl to scare out his Ninetales, and he led Magneton to scare out my Ninetales, just in case he was Scarf. But Aerodactyl was faster than Scarf Magneton, so I just sacked it just to get up Rocks, because Rocks are also the beginning of the end, because Rocks put Swampert in range of +2 high jump kick after a Hail turn. So I go out to my Hawlucha right here, just to throw off a high jump kick immediately. I wouldn't care about that, and I was pretty sure it was Specs Mag anyway. But I go out to my Ninetales because it would be able to take any hit, as he doubled out to his Crocodile, and this was like the best turn possible for me. One Crocodile cannot knock me out with anything. I can get up my Veil, he gets up his Rocks, and because Crocodile is in, I can go directly into Hawlucha right here and just set up, and he even messes up and goes for the knockoff, which means that my Unburden already activates and I don't have to care, and he takes another turn to stay in to taunt me, but that won't matter at all, as you guys will see, because I'm just going to be able to acrobatic sweep him. He messes up a few times though, definitely by staying in. He goes Swampert and sets up the rain. Even if he Ice Punch me, Adamant Ice Punch doesn't knock me out through Veil. I don't get the roll with high jump kick, but he sets up the rain, and yeah, he's not faster than me because he already knocked off, activated my Unburden. So basically, the idea of this team was that whenever Crocodile came in, Hawlucha would just set up, and Crocodile was a very, very, very common Scarfer back in the metagame of Xurkitree. So as you can see, Hawlucha is just able to sweep right there. Now, when Xurkitree got banned, there was a second variation of Veil that really ran around, and I really, really love this one. This is the same one that he was running, but like I really, really enjoyed this one because basically it had a cool tech with Crocodile that it would allow you to get up your Rocks, which were very important with Hawlucha nabbing kills. Basically, you would bring this thing in on Scizor, or you would lead off with this and your opponent would lead like Choice Band Scizor, and typically even after Intimidate, Choice Band Scizor could knock out Crocodile, but with this EV spread, you would get up Rocks, you would live 100% outside of a crit, and Eject button would activate. You'd be able to trap the Scizor, and that would mean that Hawlucha and Calm Mind Latias could just put in so much work later, or you can get up your Veil later. And again, the idea was, because Calm Mind Latias is such a threat and your opponent has to use something like Choice Scarf Crocodile to revenge kill it, once something like that came in, or once a Choice Scarf Mon came in, Hawlucha would just sub and set up. Of course, this changed a lot because Ninetales and Hawlucha both moved up to OU, so I'm not sure what the current Aurora Veil status is in the UU tier. But then we move up to OU. Now I feel like OU is the place where Aurora Veil is the most manageable. And hear me out before you say, no, that's not wrong, or that's not right. Maybe you might say, no, that's not wrong. Thank you, I appreciate you. But basically in OU, Aurora Veil has very, 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 very many faces. Typically, you'll always see maybe a Landorus or a Zygarde on it. I think Zygarde is a big one because Zygarde can easily set up a Coil and a Dragon Dance, and it also is an Aurora Veil's option for opposing Zard Y. So that's something you typically do see. Some variations will show you a Spike's offensive Greninja, as you guys will see here. Some variations will show you double Spikes Greninja with Z Landorus, set up Mawile and whatnot, sub Calm Mind Suicune with Protect to break through. But I feel like in a metagame where, at least with this one in particular, or at least this one maybe, this one the setup Magearna set, because it is Combine Shift Gear, even with Veil up, one, it's a lot easier to defog in OU, I feel, than any lower tier, mainly because they're good defoggers in OU. Well, there's Feeny and Latios. Though Latios doesn't defog the best versus this team, because then Tyranitar comes in or Magearna comes in and sets up. At least in a metagame where we have Landers running around anywhere, you can always pivot in on Zygarde. Because we do have Tangrowth running around as well. HPI's Tangrowth beats this variation of Zygarde always. Always. Doesn't matter what variation it is. Of course, Tyranitar is a giant threat, and the Fire Ice combination with Stone Edge is ridiculously hard to deal with. But if you pivot in and you have Intimidate, you have Celesteela to Leech Seed Protect. Like one variation, or when I was facing this team, one thing I would do is I would go Celesteela, I'd Leech Seed the Tyranitar even under Veil, and because and I can go back and forth between Landorus, Toxapex, and Celesteela. So that's one way you could deal with it. You also have Haze for setup. Of course, the Haze users in Toxapex doesn't have the best matchup because Thunderbolt, 1,000 Arrows, and a boosted Stone Edge. So I think this is one you could take, and obviously a Suicune. But I feel like we do have outs, especially like something with SD Scizor. But again, Aurora Veil does have many faces. Like you have a Volcarona here, which would obviously be better versus Scizor, but also worse versus Heatran. Like this team actually doesn't appreciate Heatran a lot more than any other variation of Aurora Veil. And you also have Defiant Bisharp to abuse the defog, so that way you get the boost. But Aurora Veil and OU definitely has many faces, and as you guys can see, there's this one where the game plan is get at the Veil, or lead off with Greninja, right? You lead off with Focus Sash Greninja, and this was one that was really spammed in OLT, but you get up your spikes and T-spikes, and then you just proceed to set up with Zygarde or Mawile, because you don't necessarily need straight up boosting sweepers in Veil. I think that's something that I want to make clear as well, that you do not need boosting sweepers, at least like, and I want to say by boosting sweepers I mean like Dragon Dance boosting sweepers. It can be SD. One Veil that I've actually recently used and recently had some success with was this one that I built with my boy Ralt's boy. But the idea was just around Nasty Plot Thunderous, right? You set up with it and you break through Tangrowth, Toxapex, Landorus, and that allows something like SD Mawile to break through, or something like more importantly for my team in particular, it was based around Scarf Lele, and Scarf Lele would just be able to clean up late game because Greninja gets the spikes and has HP Fire. This is Fire Fang for Ferrothorn, Earthquake for the Steel types. This breaks through all the fat Mons as well with Nasty Plot, and then the idea was Psyshock Sweep, and even Ninetales. Like another thing I want to talk about is the fact that there's so many weathers in OU that are good. You have Mega T-Tar, which obviously brings the sand, and when it Mega Evolves into Tyranitar, sets the sand again. You have Rain Pelipper, which is a very, very, very big threat that it's running around. So one ways that Ninetales adapted have been that they ran Hail, but that's a lot of 50-50s too, especially if your opponent knows you have Hail. Do they go Tyranitar? Do they Mega Evolve? Do they stay in? Of course, Hypnosis does lower those chances of 50-50s, because if you do land and put your opponent to sleep, you don't have to worry about it. But I feel like it's, even though there are a ton of offenses in the OU tier that you have to prep for, Rain, Webs, Aurora Veil, and then of course there's different variations, there's Balance, there's Stall as well. I still feel like it's a little bit harder for Veil in that tier in particular, just because of the common threats that are running around. That's not saying it's good, it's definitely really good. And when you're setting up with a bunch of Mons, especially versus fatter teams, you're typically going to either overpower them or even hacks them to a point, because a Stall, for example, especially Stall with Ducktro, because Ducktro just got banned, it's on the defensive for the most part. Yeah, they can scald you, they can unaware stall you and whatnot, but it's on the defensive for the most part. So there are ways to overpower it. But yeah, Aurora Veil being banned in RU and NU, this has just been me talking about Aurora Veil, not even like say how I feel about the ban. But I'm going to say, I'll conclude it with this. I do agree with the ban, at least in NU, I feel like. I think it was just too much. There wasn't much counterplay at all, especially versus what's good. There isn't counterplay for I feel in NU. RU, for example, though, I feel like it was super, super, super matchup reliant, and we did have outs, which was running. You did have outs, which was running. Get this mouse out of the way. Which was running like Brick on Mons, but for the most part, that wasn't good in other games going in. Like having Brick on Beware over Superpower, or having Brick on the Blade over Secret Sword, like it's a lot weaker what it does. Or Sacred Sword, not Secret Sword, excuse me, that's Caldeo, my bad. But yeah, I feel like Veil is just, it's good. It's so good. And then I think that in OU, though, it's a lot more manageable than it is, at least in any of the lower tiers. Like, I feel like UU Veil was borderline broken, with Halucha just being able to set up easily and consistently, too. Especially during that metagame, it was a very, very, very real thing that Halucha would get in, especially during the Xurkitree metagame, too. Halucha would be able to get in easily once Xurkitree went down. Xurkitree would be like the bait, basically. Bring in your Scarf Lottie. Bring in your Scarf Crocodile to deal with my Xurkitree under screens. Or weaken it, and then Halucha just comes in and sets up and does not care and just boosts. But I do think I was gonna say that I was actually talking with a few friends that play a lot of NU and RU, and I was like, do you think that Aurora Veil is gonna be retested in NU because they banned it mainly due to the screens thing? And then they banned RU Veil the next day when we found out about it. So, or not the next day after I asked that, when we found out about it. So I don't think that NU will see a return of Aurora Veil ever. At least not in this generation. I mean, we only have 2 months left. And I doubt that RU will also see one because they did recently ban it, even though we found out about it. But I guess it's a good thing for RU because you don't have to prep for Veil. I don't have to run weaker options in Brick. I don't have to run weaker options in not necessarily Psychic Fan Sharpedo, because Psychic Fan Sharpedo is a very good thing. It helps to hit Dragalge and Chestnut for it to a KO, or an Oko on Dragalge, depending on rolls. But at least in that case, you don't have to run weaker variations. But I feel like OU is just, it's super good, but I just feel like it's more manageable just because of the archetypes that we have running around. But that's not to say it's literally dual screens offense, so it of course is going to be good. But again, it's definitely something that can still be explored in the OU metagame, like variations of it. Like I said, this team wasn't necessarily for a set of Super Thunderous or a set of Super Mawile to go, but for Scarf Lele to show that it's still a threat in the metagame and be able to sweep late game, and then it has all this support off of it. But yeah, I do want to know your thoughts on Aurora Veil as a whole. Obviously, this video is a lot of me rambling, but that's what I always do when I talk about things. I did try to structure it a little bit more by going through the different tiers and even showing little replays in the background of how good it is. But I do want to know your thoughts. You guys can leave them down below on Aurora Veil. Thank you everybody for watching, of course. If you did enjoy or learn something, feel free to leave a like. Again, feel free to comment your thoughts on this stuff. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, friends.